Hello, and welcome to Auto Be Careful, the place for car safety news and information. I'm Gene, and today we're going to talk about the EPA's proposal to deregulate emissions on a massive scale. First, a little bit of background about the Clean Air Act, or CAA. The CAA is the nation's federal air quality law and is aimed at reducing air pollution throughout the United States. It was first signed into law in 1963 and has been amended and expanded several times since. It is the main legislation which the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, uses to regulate air pollution. Unfortunately, for most of the time since, the EPA did not regulate greenhouse gas emissions, which resulted in the state of Massachusetts and several other states suing the EPA for this failure. In 2007, the Supreme Court ruled that the EPA's argument for not regulating greenhouse gas emissions was insufficient. The EPA then began to study the effects of greenhouse gases, which resulted in the 2009 Endangerment Finding, in which the EPA determined that greenhouse gas emissions have an impact on public health. This became the cornerstone of the EPA's authority to regulate these emissions. Fast forward to July 29th, 2025, when the EPA announced its intention to rescind this landmark legal finding. There are many arguments for this. One is the opinion that the CAA only allows the EPA to regulate emissions on a local level, not on a global one. Another is that congressional authorization may be required to take action on issues of broad importance or societal impact. Additionally, the current EPA is questioning some of the science behind the consensus by indicating it relies on misleading claims. In all, the EPA appears to be attacking this finding in as many ways as possible to undermine this cornerstone of regulation. To understand why this is happening, it's important to know the impact the endangerment finding has had on the United States. Outside of vehicles, this finding is the foundation for the EPA to regulate emissions from a vast array of sources, including factories, mining, power plants, and other industrial sources. For vehicles, it allows the EPA to regulate emissions for cars, trucks, airplanes, trains, and other modes of transportation. Focusing on automobiles, one of the most well known programs from this is the Fleet Emissions Regulations. Under this rule, the EPA requires vehicle manufacturers to limit the average level of emissions for all the vehicles they sell, and this level decreases periodically. Since it's an average, vehicles can be sold that exceed this level as long as the manufacturer also sells vehicles below this level to offset them. To assist automakers with this program, the EPA allows manufacturers that exceed these limits to buy credits from manufacturers that fall below them. This allows legacy manufacturers to continue to sell highly profitable, high emission vehicles while funding automakers that rely on alternative energy. This part of the program has helped multiple electric vehicle manufacturers get off the ground while encouraging legacy manufacturers to invest in their own alternative fuel vehicles. This proposed change essentially eliminates what some people are incorrectly calling an EV mandate. This label is misleading because it doesn't require automakers to produce EVs, but it does encourage them to produce lower emission vehicles, including gasoline ones. Unfortunately, while making this change could lead to economic benefits, it's likely to cause harm to the people of this country. Science has shown that more emissions will lead to broader health issues, and both the legislative and judicial branches of the United States have put in place guidance to encourage the EPA to continue to regulate these emissions. Even putting all of this aside, there is the belief that the government shouldn't be subsidizing the sale of specific types of vehicles and let the free market decide which vehicles are popular. In this case, the government would also need to stop subsidizing the cost of gasoline by realigning the gas tax to account for the true cost of maintaining the roads on which vehicles drive. As I mentioned in my video about road infrastructure, the United States charges an artificially low gas tax of about 18 cents per gallon, while other developed nations charge a more market realistic rate of about $2.75 per gallon. Believing in the free market means a willingness to pay an extra $2.50 per gallon. And if you're interested in learning more about that topic, I'll link that video in the description below. So, what can be done to stop this from happening? This proposal is required to go through a period of public comment when you'll be able to submit your opinions on the matter. This period has already started and will continue until September 15th of 2025. If you're interested in telling the EPA what you think of the proposal, I'll link the comment website in the description below. If the proposal moves forward and becomes a rule, it's likely to occur next year and will probably be followed by many legal challenges. This process is expected to take several years before a final outcome is decided, but we will follow it closely. Hopefully, the result is the safest for the health of all Americans. So that's a look at the current proposal to roll back 16 years worth of emissions regulations and what you can do to influence the outcome. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and remember to like and subscribe.